did you?
We did. We started it. Yeah, we started it. Yeah, he was going to do a pre-show meeting thing, but he didn't really jump in. So we are going. We're live. How are you doing, guys? Jake Paul, Anthony Joshua. It happened. Dakota actually wrote a story on ITR Boxing. Let's lead with it. It's 3 things he learned from it. Love teachable moments. Why don't we go through that before we break? Well, I'll just simply say the result, in case you tune into this show for results. Anthony Joshua knocks out Jake Paul. It wasn't super surprising, but there were some things to unpack, such as the cultural relevance of the fight, such as where does boxing go, such as where does Jake Paul go, where does Anthony Joshua go, etc. Let's start with the 3 things that Dakota learned that will be linked in the show notes for the YouTube and the podcast versions.
Well, I appreciate that, Lukey. And by the way, I'm working with some upstate New York internet right now, so apologies to you and whoever's watching if I kind of crack in and out. Feel free to let me know if that's happening, and I'll pop in and back out.
We accept your apology in advance, so it's very thoughtful of you doing that, and we already accept the apology.
Salute to you, bro. I mean, the first main lesson, the main takeaway for me is that mismatches are not interesting, right? Like, I think that the writing was on the wall on this fight in a lot of ways, and Jake Paul creates matchups that can kind of get people's imaginations going, but it did kind of feel like the outcome of this fight was inevitable, and it's not the first Jake Paul fight where it's felt that way. And so, at least for me, I know that part of why this is not particularly interesting to me, or for why some of the matchups that and fights that Jake Paul is in have not been interesting to me, is just that I'm not really in boxing for mismatches, right? Like, I think that boxing's at its best when you have as many questions as answers, when it's really unclear what the outcome or how a fight's going to go, or what the tempo of the fight's going to be. And ideally with, heavyweight withstanding that it's against 2 guys that are of relatively similar stature and proportion and builds. And those are the kinds of things that we as boxing fans who have been in this for a long time have been in it for. And I think that's part of maybe, like, if it took us all a second to kind of get adjusted to Jake Paul's presence in boxing, it's just counterintuitive to what we're in the sport for. And so when he brought a different type of fan to the game, which in retrospect, I think I appreciate a little more, even though I don't know that it's translating to other boxing. I just think that understanding that there is a process of how fighters come up, and I don't want to speak too much.
Well, are we going into your second one? Because I think we should unpack each and every one. So is this going into 2?
No. Please jump in, bro. Please jump in.
Because for me, with your first one about mismatches, I think the appeal, even for me, is there's a social media component of social media is chaos. And Jake Paul reminds me of a .com guy. And I was thinking about this before I drove to the podcast studio, which is on property and it's not illegal to do, just for those monitoring. And to me, he reminds me of like a 1995 tech guy that says, I'm a disruptor. And I think you started to hear that language. So I'm here to change preconceived notions. And normally those type of figures create new industries, right? That's how search engines and whatever. And I think that's the role Paul sees himself in. And the way he sees himself within boxing, I think, is interesting, because he views himself as a disruptor, but the way he's disrupting is almost unlike any way you could disrupt any other sport, which is headlining pay-per-views that you really haven't gone through the process to do so, but it's based on fame. And with that kind of brings like this faith-based argument that's very modern from like social media, where you basically, people that agree with your type of thinking is all you follow. So you just reinforce everything you think. You're not always
right. And then anything new that's coming up in your feed is agreeing with you because the algorithm knows you'll engage with it. And then that, you know,
or maybe vice versa. It knows you engage with the opposite opinion, so you get mad at it. But it's like you're living in a world in which you're confirming a lot of what you think. And unless you actively seek challenges or new thoughts, you have to find those and engage with them. And I feel as though this fight was a very much the living embodiment of almost AI or social media, where it was absolutely absurd in nature. We went from Jake Paul going from fighting a lightweight to fighting a heavyweight, neither of which fights really made sense. And in the end, logic prevailed. But it was more about the fact, to me, with the engagement and everything, is what will this look like? And is he really doing it? And oh my God, he's doing it. The balls this kid has. And we don't traditionally frame boxing as that. And I think that that is the uniqueness of it. And we can unpack if that's good or not. But to me, in that, the mismatch, I felt like from most credible outlets and most people that had an understanding of the sport that weren't trolling, the framing more so was, what's this visually going to look like when it happens? And I don't think we typically look at main event fights like that.
Right. It's not what's the outcome, it's how bad is the outcome going to be for the loser. That's the ultimate conclusion. And I think that, listen, bro, I was thinking about this. You know how, like, I'm sure you've had this experience, right? Because people in your life know you're a boxing guy. People in my life know I'm a boxing guy. And somebody will ask you something in genuine curiosity, but they'll say, who would have won, Mike Tyson or Sugar Ray Leonard? Because they don't understand the weight classes. They're just not aware. They're not of the understanding.
I mean, it used to happen in fight night. People would pick Ray Robinson or Marvin Hagler to fight Muhammad Ali, and they didn't realize that there were differences in the weights.
Right, exactly. So you'll have people, even, you know, well-intending, interested people ask you a question like that without understanding weight classes. That's kind of how Jake has come off in terms of his opponent choices to me, where because he's a little newer to the game, it's like, listen, I'll fight anybody. I'll fight Tank Davis. I'll fight Canelo. I'll fight Anthony Joshua. He's looking at the opponents like a list of video game characters, as opposed to understanding, which does, I think, transition to my second point, that weight classes matter. It's sort of prevented him from choosing a weight class and developing his skill set at a certain weight against guys of his stature. Largely fighting guys that are much smaller than him and now moving completely the opposite direction. You know, I couldn't tell you how many of his fans actually, you know, believed that he would win this fight. But regardless, I would say, you know, this being the greatest mismatch of them all, there wasn't really ever a chance, even at 215 pounds. But for somebody who's fought between 180 and 215 pounds against a variety of different sized men, it just seems like, you know, if he wants to be a serious fighter, if we're now taking the kid gloves off, he's got rods in his jaw now, right? Like, he's gone through some things that only find a weight that works for you and work your way up.
Yeah, I mean, I think that to get back to what you're saying is, I think that the genius to what he does and the disruptor nature is he always finds a dance partner in a matchup that's kind of like we've talked about on the phones before. It's a car crash like appeal of, that's weird, but I want to see it. And he finds these matchups, and I think the way you're talking about it is a more like, that's just never going to be what he does. It's like there's always some type of, what would it look like if he fought Chavez Jr.? What would it look like if he fought 58-year-old Mike Tyson? Like, that's
because you don't really know what he is as a fighter, right? I think that's a piece of it, is because of the opponents and the weights. If they are boxers, the weights they're fighting at, there's just, you know, there isn't much out there to tell you about what kind of fighter he is.
I also think it's about engagement. I think this is just a different way of looking at sport, and it's looking at what are the numbers and who are the people that can make as big of a fight and as big of a spectacle. It's not about necessarily what's the fighter that's going to hone my skills to get to the title. It's about, for this next event, how do we get the biggest engagement? How do we move the needle? I think it's more of a concert approach than it is about fighter development, at least to me.
Sure. I think that's a great way of putting it.
So, third thing you learned.
Well, I mean, aside from the fact that mismatches aren't interesting and weight classes are important, and those seem like very common sense things, but as we start to get maybe some new fans into the sport, right? And occasionally, Lukey, we've seen some of those fans in our chat that ask, hey, do you guys also talk about MMA or ask us, you know, some different types of questions? And they're coming to this, you know, fresh off of another interest. I just don't think this is a great first impression for boxing. And my hope is that for like a lot of the largely young men that Jake Paul has newly brought to boxing, whether they enjoyed what they watched or whether they feel duped by what they watched, I've seen a variety of opinions around that, even from his own fans. It's just not a great first impression. And I hope that, you know, if you're one of those young guys that was watching that sometimes pops up in our chat and asks us questions, that if Jahmal Harvey caught your eye, or that if Yokasta Valle caught your eye, or Alycia Baumgardner caught your eye, or maybe you watched the Salida card and some one of those guys caught your eye, you know, there's a lot more of that than there is Joshua versus Paul. Jake Paul is a unique entity in the sport of boxing. And if some of the other fighters that MVP does a beautiful job of promoting are of interest to you, there's a lot more you can get into that's more substantive.
My guy, Heavy D, it means that you do not play with professional fighters that definitely the ones that have established themselves, like Anthony Joshua, point blank. But did you see that fight on Thursday night on ProBox TV? Heavy D is a relative of Joeshon James. So we're going to get into that fight soon. I did. Now I think I texted Dakota. I think I texted you about the Rocky 2 moment, the double knockdown. Just to finish up on this, what did you think of Anthony Joshua? Because this wasn't a great performance from Joshua. I mean, he got the job done. Paul literally ran for the first 4-ish rounds. That's not the easiest thing. But at the same time, like, I didn't see a guy that I'm itching to see in with Tyson Fury. I didn't see a guy that I'm really enthused to see fight at the next level. This wasn't a great performance from Joshua, in my opinion.
Yeah, but I don't think there was any way for it to be a great performance unless it was, because the terms of this fight were different. The only way Joshua could win is by knocking him out in the first round with the first big punch he landed. And Jake Paul could get a moral victory by circling the ring for 8 rounds and surviving. That would be a win for him. So the terms of this fight were just different. And I think that Paul's unwillingness to engage and inability to control his anxiety and control his emotions and keep his body under control. Like, I just think it was a guy who's a little past his prime, who hasn't fought in like a year and a half, and he's got a guy literally running away from him. And it just took him a little second to get his bearings, but it's not a great performance. And again, that was always the risk for him of taking this fight, is that it's a lose-lose outside of, right, like I said, that 30-second one big punch knockout that satisfied everyone perfectly or whatever.
Our guy Jesus Sam, are we really breaking down AJ versus Jake Paul? Fake Nello is drooling for the Paul payday. We love it. Well, we're actually now done with it. And if you listen to the show on demand, you can actually skip the whole dialogue we had about it. But I think it was the most culturally relevant fight, and we needed to talk about it. Undercard, Alycia Baumgardner beats Leila Beaudoin. I thought that was a kind of a surprise to me. I expected Leila Beaudoin to really do well and possibly win that fight. That impressed me. Jahmal Harvey, exceptional. You know, really with that level of fighter, versatile, just has the makings of having a really big next year, and just really looks like one of those top-notch fighters, Shakur Stevenson level fighter. And then undercard, Cherneka Johnson beats Amanda Galle in what I think was the best fight on the card. And Yokasta Valle versus Yadira Bustillos. Sneaky, really fun fight that I wouldn't be mad if they did a rematch. It seemed like nothing was settled and there was tension between the two fighters. And I also want to bring up Avious Griffin with a first-round knockout of Justin Cardona. Those
A
were the
rough
notables.
one.
Rough one, man. They're really trying to cram the knockouts of the year at the end of the year this year. What stood out to you?
I think there was a couple things that stood out to me, but for me, the big standout of the night is Jahmal Harvey. I just think like seeing a guy in his second pro fight look that developed. You know, he's not. We've seen so many guys go pro so young recently, right? And so to see like a 23-year-old guy who's maybe a little more mature, a little more developed, just be so complete in his second pro fight, it was a beautiful thing to watch. The only thing I would say with that is, you know, I just there was a little bit of a pace drop off or maybe an attention span drop off at certain points at the end of the fight, but that's just getting more experience and understanding, you know, your first time going the distance as a pro. But to me, he was the big standout on the night. I think that there's really that's one of the faces of the future of boxing.
It's one of the most exciting young fighters, you know, quite obviously to me. There's so much to like. Any of those, they said, you mean he will never fight again, not with a broken jaw like that? Man, Key Crazy said, what did I miss? You basically just missed the Jake Paul, Anthony Joshua discussion, and Avious Griffin was getting hit before the knockout. I mean,
he gets hit.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's like Griffin fights like a guy who came to boxing late. Like, he's not like a, you know, but he hits hard. And that's the trade-off.
Yeah. Oh, he does hit fucking hard.
It's hard. Anything else stand out to you? Did you see the Cherneka Johnson fight? Did you see the Valle fight?
I saw all of them. You know, I thought the fact that Alycia, you know, as critical as I've been on her, I thought it was impressive how she paced herself through a 12-round fight. Maybe I wanted to see her put her foot on the gas more because it felt like, especially in the back half, you know, that she was starting to really dominate the fight. And I think maybe she could have put her out, but it was a solid, measured performance, and it was one of the better ones I've seen, in my opinion, from her in several years. I thought it was a lot of fun. It was a fucking death. I thought that she looked maybe like a little more vulnerable in this one than she has in her more recent fights, but it was a great performance. And Yoka, I mean, she's just, to me, I think she's working on being, you know, one of the greats of her time. And it wasn't maybe the best performance, but to fight a girl that's like 10 years younger than her, and at least to me, pretty clearly win it in that last couple of rounds, pull it away. It was a great performance from her.
Love kind of like the animosity she has too. Like, she's like a real fighter in and out. Like,
Yeah.
you think of like a girl that kind of dresses up and goes to the weigh-ins, but it's like when there's any disrespect, you see the fighter in her. You know, like she's feisty and angry, and I kind of like it. You know, it's she's an interesting character. Let's go over to let's just kind of keep the cards rolling. There were a lot of fights this week. I'm not sure which one you want to jump to. I'm prone to just go Wednesday. There was fights on Tuesday. I didn't really follow them. They were developmental fights. Wednesday we had Giorgio Visoli, who I think you're talking about guys to keep your eye on. I think Giorgio Visoli is definitely on that list. Matchroom ran a developmental show on a Wednesday in the UK. He's really good at lightweight. You know, we're talking about someone that might have at most 10 fights, 9, 10, 11 fights. And he's looking like a fringe title contender already. We're talking about a true contender. He beats Joe Hawthorne, good pressure fighter. You know, he took what his opponent was giving him, which is pressure, and trying to take him into the deep part of the fight. And he not just boxed, but was able to fight in the trenches and win exchanges that way. I thought it was just a very complete performance.
I still have yet to see him, Lukey. Unfortunately, the fights that I saw the whole Netflix card, and I was able to catch all of the Salida card last night. But that was the totality.
We'll get to those. Yeah, that, I mean, to me, Visoli is one of these guys that next year I think fits into like a Dalton Smith or a Sam Noakes vibe, where he's a really good UK fighter. I'd say 70% of the US fans are going to go, who is this guy? And he's going to pop out and he's going to earn people's respect. And I think it's really impressive to me when someone is able to win that dominantly at this early in their career, you know. And I think also it might not mean stuff to a lot of people, but to beat James Crunch Time Wilkins, who's been kind of a veteran gym guy, been in a lot of camps, that's who he beat. And he came to Philly to win that fight. That kind of put me on his radar, where it's like he goes to Philly and dominates like a well-respected gym veteran. Guy's really good.
I look forward to seeing him, man. I've heard nothing but good things. I just haven't been able to catch him myself.
Okay, then we'll jump. This is going to be a lot of Lukey talking. So if you don't like the Lukey talking segments, you're in trouble.
I watched as much boxing as I could, guys. I swear.
So we're going to go to Tim Tszyu versus Anthony Velasquez. Velasquez taking a big step up in competition. Tim Tszyu no longer the soul taker. I believe he's now the Phoenix. And this was kind of what you wanted Tim to have. You know, he got his rounds. He goes 10. Velasquez gets cut. Just pretty much Tim dominated the fight. He didn't get the stoppage, but he dominates. It's his first fight with kind of a new team around him. But I think all in all, it was very good. It's been a wild 2 years, going on 3 years now for Tim. To think that 3 years ago, basically, we thought that he was the face of boxing. And now he's back to where he was 3 years ago with a lot of people giving up hope on him.
Yeah.
Very short period of time, so much has happened in Tim's career.
Did he look assertive? Like, did he look like he knew who he was in there?
He looks like a guy that's coming off a lot of hard fights, if you ask me. And he looked like he fought a guy that had mostly fought in the Northeast and was a qualified opponent, but had never taken this level of step up in competition. Like everything looked
same
like
deal with same deal with Joey.
Yeah, I mean it very much looked the part. But that being said, I think that he's one of these guys that it's going to be interesting to see what his 2026 is, because he got his win. I'm sure they're going to take their time and rebuild him. But this was a fight I had circled because I thought that a lot of things could have gone wrong in this fight.
Yeah, but I do think there is a baseline where, like, he was able to win a decision against an unbeaten guy and was able to maintain. So, like, after what has happened with him in the last couple of years, I think that his ability to do even that was unclear. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, I mean, I think that any outcome going into this fight was possible. I did not feel like, I thought that this could, like he could have lost, he could have won, it could have been a draw, it could have been, I thought any single outcome. So to get a win, dominate, and have some momentum going into the next year, that's a net win. He beat an undefeated fighter. Yes, it's mostly a regional level fighter, but it's still an undefeated fighter. For the guy that loses, it's still not that bad because you're the guy that went over and fought Tim Tszyu, and Tim's probably a different level than you currently. So that there's a level of notoriety that you gain from being in a fight like this, along with money. It's overall good. Jesus M says Tim versus Thurman next. I mean, I think Thurman broke a mirror somewhere along the line, because it's like, I just don't. We could do a prop bet. Does Keith Thurman fight in 2020? We'll do it right now. Does Keith Thurman fight in 2026, Dakota?
I think he does. I think he does.
I don't know how to gauge it. Because he fought once this year. He fought Brock Jarvis.
I think he fights once in 2026, but I do think it's very likely that him wanting to do the Fundora fight and actually not being the one that got injured means that he's physically, able to do it, and I think that he will.
I just think Fundora versus Thurman's going to happen, and I don't think that's going to be a good fight for Thurman.
Probably not. But that may not matter. That may not matter in terms of making a matchup between him and Tim.
Mankey Crazy said Thurman isn't fighting Fundora. I would assume that Thurman versus Fundora would be like a co-feature to some card, and that's going to be probably a rough one. And that's another topic for another day, but Fundora basically stole the Tim Tszyu thunder, beat him, and then kind of took his career trajectory.
And completely resurrected his own career. That's the crazy. It wasn't just like he was like a meddling guy. He had just literally been knocked out cold by Brian Mendoza, and it wasn't There was nothing about that fight that was in his favor.
We jump over to Japan, and I'm going to have a deeper esoteric question after I read these results. But a fight that I really recommend you watch, especially over the holidays and relaxing, is Tsutsumi versus Nonito Donaire, split decision. I think the right guy won, but a friggin' awesome fight. Like, this is a great holiday, no one's around fight to watch. Just a great one. Banger of a fight, right? And then also, you know, I saw someone on Twitter say this, but there's a little bit of truth to this. Puerto Rican Renee Santiago defeats unbeaten Kazuki Takayama to become the WBO 108 champion. And someone on Twitter said that Santiago is the best Puerto Rican title holder currently because he's basically just taken all hard fights. He's, I think, 15-4 or 14-4, but it's like he hasn't taken any soft touches. And now he goes to Japan and beats an unbeaten world champion. And the Tsutsumi versus Donaire fight is basically a smaller, less historically relevant or dramatic version of the Inoue-Donaire fight to a certain degree. It didn't have the same high drama, but I mean, we're talking about a fight that was extremely good. It didn't have the same kind of tension that fight had, but this is an exceptional fight. But what I want to,
where do I watch that, Lukey?
I would go to YouTube. But this goes to my main point. What does Japanese boxing look like without the ESPN deal? Because it feels like people like you and me, we're watching a lot of Japanese boxing. We're getting accurate assessments on fighters like Kenshiro Teraji, right? We probably wouldn't have accurate assessments, but we get the fights, we watch the fights. Without the ESPN deal, where does Japanese boxing in 2026 exist in the US?
I don't know that it exists in the US other than maybe on the Top Rank Facebook page until Top Rank has a promotional or a streaming deal, I should say. Unfortunately, I just think even though Japan has ascended to be one of the more successful countries in terms of boxing, it's just not going to be something that we have access to for the time being.
Yeah, I mean, it is something else. So that's kind of
that's the kind of fight. You know me, that's the kind of fight that if it was available to me, I'd watch it, no brainer. You know what I mean?
I mean, it's a great fight. Tsutsumi is becoming, I think, it's kind of becoming the Juan Francisco Estrada of this era to me.
A little bit.
Where it's like he's really becoming a solid Hall of Fame trajectory fighter, but like he's the afterthought. Like he's a fringe guy.
I think he's starting to frame himself as potentially like an interesting opponent for Bam, depending on when Bam decides to leave junior bantamweight.
I just think that he's someone who is starting to build an interesting resume, and he's not really looked at from a modern historical sense that he's one of the 20 best fighters. And I think he is one of the 20 best fighters.
What do you think about Nonito still doing it? Like, it's amazing that now for the second time, it seems like he has like one more great one in him, like one more big night in him, but he doesn't quite win it. Like, is it exceptional? Is it getting weird? Like, how do you feel about what Nonito's doing?
I mean, it's hard to comment, right? Because it's like a part of me is like, it makes me scared because like, as you get older, but then it's like sometimes the real great ones can defy logic and everything that we know. And that's kind of what we want sport to be, is like the greatest athletes of our era to defy everything we think is possible and to set new standards for others to break. So I'm very conflicted on it, right? Because there's like the human being in me going like, man, he's had a good career. Does he really need to do it? But then there's also the one that goes, well, Bernard Hopkins and Foreman have this record. Could Nonito break it? And he's still competing. Like,
I guess for me, the difference is Bernard was winning and Nonito's competing. And I just wonder at what point Like, he was once a pound for pound great in the sport, and for him to become a really good gatekeeper, like, I respect that he's able to do that, but is that really how I want to see the last part of his career? I'm glad he's not Roy. I'm glad I'm not seeing him get knocked out cold by anybody other than Inoue. You know what I mean? But at the same time, is that a role?
My standard for Tszyu is different because I see him as a real elite fighter. I don't think Donaire's not winning against the best fighters anymore, but the thing about Roy was he was losing to up and comers at a certain point. Yep. I don't think Donaire is losing to up and comers currently.
Right. It's established champions. And but to be fair, I think in his prime, he probably would have beaten Santiago.
You mean Tszyu?
No. The guy that he lost to prior.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I also think that was just a weird stylistic matchup. You know, a guy with a lot of energy fighting an older fighter. It's just a hard fight.
Yeah.
You know, that's now going into the ProBox card. What a night for ProBox. We're going to read your comments after this one. Knockout of the year potential. Marlon Harrington gets a crazy brutal knockout. Where does that stand on the Brian Norman, Frank Martin, Marlon Harrington knockout?
Again, I'd have to watch them all kind of consecutively, but man, that's about as gnarly as it gets, honestly.
My gut feeling is that's probably knockout of the year. That was kind of my feeling when I saw it.
And I think if it was maybe a slightly more significant fight, it'd be a no-brainer.
But I also think that, like, we could say that, but he was also fighting an undefeated prospect. So
it's a significant fight, but I'm saying if it's you know, maybe at the championship level, it's a no-brainer.
To me, this one was more impressive than Frank knocking out an older fighter, albeit that was impressive. And Sasaki was a more aggressive fighter. What was impressive about this was there was a level of, first, mental toughness to not be down on yourself as being a quote-unquote opponent, and two, to walk a guy into that level of a shot. I'm really thinking this might be the knockout of the year.
It's right up there, Bob.
Next week, we're doing awards. People get ready. It's going to be fun. Then we had Heavy D's relative in the chat.
Lukey, while you get into the rest of the ProBox card, I'm going to go get some water real quick.
Okay, so we had Joeshon James taking on Martinez. Really good fight. Double knockdown. Rocky 2 moment. Joeshon James becoming one of the more interesting fighters at super middleweight. Fought a ton of really, really good fighters on the come up. Extremely confident. He's going to have to need to adjust certain things. But I'm not really fully sure where his trajectory is, but really big win for him. Ramon Cardenas, kind of the star of the show. We talked last week about, could Cardenas carry a card, and would he handle it? You know, would he handle the way this show is crafted and built around him and such? And he did it. You know, not just did he do it. He first fight with Manny Robles, gets a walk-off home run knockout, seals the deal, emphatic stoppage. Impressive. And I think that's what, like, when you see a guy drop Inoue and become a fringe star, you want to see people go to that next level, go to new heights. And that's what he did. And that is frigging impressive. So shout out to him. You know, shout out to Ramon Cardenas. While Dakota is away, I'm going to read your comments. Alycia Baumgardner is a beast. She is the truth. Next year, the WBC Grand Prix couldn't be bigger. Nobody really knew about it until the end, but it's really good for boxing. Let's give everybody a chance to make a bag. I am all for that. Michael Zarafa versus Tim Tszyu does nothing. Yeah, but I mean, if that fight can be made, I think that's going to be a fight made. Lane 99 tuning in late. Not sure if it's been addressed. Joshua Paul was a real fight. I'm 100% sure it was a real fight. How could it have gotten sanctioned as an ethical sporting event? Well, that is a question for the Florida State Athletic Commission. So you could ask them. followed up. Joshua literally could have killed him if he wanted to, as if he went easy on him. I like Lane 99. I hear what you're saying, but there's a lot of speculation. You know, I think that they're definitely Florida State Athletic Commission felt comfortable, you know, making the fight, but you know, it's their discretion. I have zero questions about if it was a quote unquote real fight, because Paul took real damage, and you don't take real damage if it's not a real fight. He's got lifelong injuries from that fight. So I think anyone that questions the validity of the fight, it's just, that's not right. That's not right for anybody. That's not right for the promotion, the fans, or anybody. Lukey, did you see Sean Estrada being a superstar? I didn't. But, you know, there's been people that I thought were superstars that didn't turn out as well. So I don't bat 1,000. Now let's go over to Saturday, and we will talk about the WBC Grand Prix. And in case you've missed it, the WBC Grand Prix, I think I've kind of dubbed the Grand Prix as a thing that in 2 to 3 years people will revisit and enjoy. It's the type of boxing event I personally really like, where it's all about, if you understand boxing and you can watch boxing on this is the fights, and I don't have any hoopla to watch. I just have to watch a fight straight up to see the outcome of the bout and to be guided by that. Kevin Ramirez is your heavyweight champion. He beat Ahmed. I can't say his last name. Ramirez has really been a standout to me because he's essentially a cruiserweight from Argentina. Well, he is from Argentina, but he's a cruiserweight who's winning fights in the heavyweight division against much bigger men. I don't know if he'll stay at heavyweight because it doesn't seem like maybe the best situation for him. But what we've seen now is a guy who's beaten a bunch of unbeaten fighters at cruiserweight, wins a heavyweight, or at fighting as a cruiserweight in the heavyweight division. Imagine if he fights at cruiserweight. I would love to see Kevin Ramirez take on Jay Apatay. I'd love to see Kevin Ramirez against Gilberto Zordo Ramirez. I'd love to see him in with various fighters, and that becomes an interesting matchup. In the junior welterweight division, we saw Carlos Utier fairly comfortably beat Tursunov. I'm not saying his first name because I would screw it up. And Carlos Utier, Colombian fighter, like everybody in this tournament, in the we'll call it like almost like a Mortal Kombat tournament. You beat quality fighters. And, you know, you look at his path, fairly dominant. The one thing you note, there's only been 2 stoppage wins. Those 2, you know, but once again, another good win. Now he's 37 on the box rank world rankings. That is good. Dylan Biggs is your winner at the middleweight. He beats Derek Pomerleau, which is good. Dylan Biggs, now the Australian, 23 years old, walks away as the winner from the tournament. One thing to note, depending on who you are and what type of fights you like, albeit it's world-class boxing and he's fighting at the highest level, no knockouts. So that's something to keep in mind if you're a super stickler for whatever the world-class boxing stuff. And then the one I was most invested in, featherweight Brandon Mosquieda, who I think is kind of a breakout of this tournament, defeated Mamet Kwamela. And that was a pretty big one. 21-year-old from Mexico, just fairly dominant for the whole tournament. Exciting style, and I think extremely promising up-and-comer. Probably one of the best prospects in all of boxing. Just emerged as a standout in this tournament, has really kind of taken over the thing. So that was kind of my thoughts on it. Very fun tournament. Very boxing-centric tournament. Also not going to get a ton of attention because it's boxing centric and not talk centric. Someone in the chat probably is a bot saying talk about the Epstein files. We are a boxing show, not a politics show. Ramirez, Street Sweeper. Go watch Alex Jones if you want to. Yeah, great. People in the chat responding to people asking about politics. Jesus M. Kevin Ramirez versus who in cruiserweight? I mean, just throw Kevin Ramirez in with anybody. It would be great. I want the World Boxing Super Series back. I love tournaments. Jesus M now is saying, and we're going to get into that now because this is just the never-ending podcast. Unless Dakota has anything he wants to add about the WBC Grand Prix that concluded this week.
I say we keep it moving, Bob. I've already missed it, unfortunately.
Okay, so Amado Vargas fought a personality called Dean the Great. And in this influencer boxing world, people don't go by their real names. They go by their handles. And it was just an ugly fight. I just think sometimes influencer boxing is built around a world that I don't understand. And part of that world is just a level of disrespect I don't get, where people say sensational things that I would assume would get you punched in the face or make you not feel safe, because there's a level of disrespect I try not to ever.
And it's spectacle, right? It's spectacle too, because you can do spectacle in a different way through a screen than you can in person. So I think that there's a kind of a code like that. I mean, a perfect example is Jake bringing friggin' Tekashi 6ix9ine out to the ring with him. It's like, there's a lot of people that have very strong opinions about him, but ultimately what they're doing is they're using each other for spectacle because that's the currency.
Yeah, it's the clout currency. And
yeah.
So the build up to that fight was the guy fighting Amado Vargas said some nasty things about Amado and his family.
Ooh.
And it was not great. Let's just say it didn't paint boxing in the greatest light. And I think it got some viewership, but it's just that. And I think also on that card, we had David Lopez, a phenomenal up-and-comer. He gets a second-round stoppage over Luis Garcia. That's notable. Amir Cashman Anderson, he gets a win. But what stole the headlines was Chase Demoor beat up Andrew Tate, a right-wing political influencer who basically just says really, what would you say, edgy statements that like most people wouldn't accept, and that's his brand. So he's just going to say things, and if you don't like him, you're politically correct. And
I think painful would be a fair characterization too.
But it's like he's become a very aggressive person who's marketed himself as like, I'm an alpha male. I'm super tough.
Yeah, he's a big tough guy. Yeah, he's a big tough guy.
And he took this fight, and I think part of it was to show how tough he was, and he basically got beat up by a guy who didn't really know how to box. And yeah, I mean, that's basically it. But it's
you love to see it.
It is pretty humbling because I guess people said he smoked cigars and he got tired in the third round, which if you smoke cigars, that seems about when you'd get tired, even if you trained for a boxing match.
I'm going to be real though. You don't inhale cigars. So I think for him to use his cigar smoking as an excuse.
It wasn't an excuse. I saw other people. Yeah. But that happened. We will now skip past that. Let's go to the Salida card, which you did see.
Yes, I did. And I also saw Craig Evans knock out Dan Azeez. I don't know if I missed you talking about that, but
we can start there. So Craig Richards versus Dan Azeez, the knockout. Tell us about that.
I thought that was a great performance from Richards, man. I mean, it was a close fight through the first half, and I felt like he just started landing the cleaner, harder shots that were affecting Azeez. You definitely didn't see that knockout coming. Not that you would pick that for knockout of the year, but it's another one, excellent knockout to just kind of throw in the mix right at the end of the year and in this same weekend of boxing. But listen, I mean, in terms of British light heavyweights, it's like him and Callum Smith are the two that I'm interested in continuing to see at the world level. I thought it was a very good performance from him.
Felt like Craig Richards versus Dan Azeez was the anti Jake versus Joshua, because here you have two guys who basically earned their spot, have fought a lot of really tough guys, maybe sometimes that they were unqualified to be in the ring with because of accolades and experience, and really have become world-class fighters at the highest level. And, Craig Richards is just, I think that the best way to describe him is he's a true professional when it comes to pro boxing. He's a true world-class boxer. And you might not ever say, okay, he's the best of his era, but what would you say, for the past 5 or 6 years, he's been a top 10 heavyweight?
Yeah, without a doubt. And I mean, like, I can't recall ever watching him and not feeling like he was competent or feeling like he was shortchanging something or whatever. Like there is an element where I think there's an intensity level that he can't get up to where he's not going to beat the Dimitri Bivols of the world, as we saw, but he's good enough that he can maybe win a round or two and keep himself in the mix. And certainly on like a UK regional level, he's definitely elite, and I would say inarguably like a top 10 light heavyweight right now.
Also, Nishant Dev is someone I think people need to really keep their eyes on. Really exciting Olympian from India. Really, really good fighter.
He is impressive.
I think he's about a year away from being on everyone's radar. Let's go to the Salida card. Olivia Curry, Kay Scott. Kay Scott wins the women's middleweight titles. Now it sets the stage probably for an undisputed clash between her and Desley Robinson, because the Desley Robinson, the Australian, holds the other two women's titles. Desley Robinson, I believe they're 1-1 in their fights. Let me look that up because facts do matter, and we shouldn't.
No, they are.
They are. So, I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer to have a trilogy that's for the undisputed titles, but I'm curious to get your thoughts on this.
On which part, that matchup or the fight with the second fight with Curry?
The card in the fight.
Listen, I thought Kay Scott did a better job of kind of defining her range in the first half of the fight and at least keeping herself at a punching distance that Curry could not be as effective from. It did sort of devolve into a similar type of fight as the first one, probably by like the 7th or the 8th round. But I think that Scott was far enough ahead that 3 or 4 50-50 rounds wasn't going to lose her the fight. And I thought she won this one very clearly and showed a little bit more of her pedigree doing it this time around.
Breaking news, Tremaine Williams might jump on the pod. That's exciting.
There you go, Bob.
Yeah. I thought that it was an ugly fight.
I thought it was a good performance.
I thought the first fight was one of the more exciting performances that we could see, right? The first one was like, it might not been like, I think you said it best. It was hard to view it as a world title fight because the skill and craft wasn't completely there. But man, was it a fun little back and forth, just beat you up fight. This fight, it felt like Scott found her identity more. I thought Paulie did a great job on the call along with Raul Marquez and Al Bernstein. Scott does find her range, but she falls in. And it's like she kind of needs to get that range a little bit more defined to keep people away. And the thing I noticed with Curry was it almost felt like it was too soon for the rematch for her, because it felt like she'd been through a hard camp, a hard fight. And in this fight, she just looked a step slower and she didn't quite have that same intensity and ferociousness. And I wonder if it's the mileage of her career, if it's the previous fight, if it's the thing, or if everything's adding up right now, because I did feel like Curry lost a gear.
It's all adding up. I don't
It's
think
adding
she
up.
could match intensity in the same way. And Yeah, and listen, the back half of that first fight, especially the last 4 rounds, Curry was very dominant. She wasn't able to mount that comeback. She did take a lot of punches against Shadejah, who was a big puncher, and it's just she's had some tough fights, and this was a quick back-to-back for a fight that was as brutal as the first one was.
Yeah, that was the thing is I just don't think maybe we ever see Curry at that point again because a lot of her style was based on durability. And that's a hell of a trait to have because durability isn't a skill, it's an attribute. And when that attribute depletes or diminishes, all of a sudden now you don't really have things to fall back on. So I think that's kind of a dangerous thing. Anything else that you found notable on the undercard?
Listen, I thought that Bryce Taylor had a good performance against Michael Coffey. I thought that he looked like his attention span was more there for the entirety of the fight. And Coffey, who's got a good jab, he's proven to be a durable keeper type through the years. I felt like it was an appropriate opponent for him, and I thought that it was also just maybe the most fun watch in terms of fights on the card as well. But I enjoy watching Price, man, and aside from having, I think the fact that he throws combinations and a variety of punches that most heavyweights don't throw is going to be interesting against most opponents. Being 280 pounds and being able to throw 6-7 punch combinations, winding up on every one, I think that's going to be tricky for a lot of guys.
Yeah, he's a tough one to gauge, right? Because he's got a lot of different things he can do, and he looks like a 240-pound man at a bigger size. Like he doesn't look his weight per se that the scale says.
He carries it well.
His focus is starting to trouble me, and it's like when things like I don't know if it could be generational, I could be old, but it feels like there's a new era, which is obvious. Duh, Lukey, there is a new era. And he's very much a part of that era in the sense that, social media and consuming content. And he's a very nice guy. I lost Dakota. He's a very, very nice guy, and he's a big personality. But I do wonder about, like, he has these lapses in fights, and it's almost like the co-feature Tony Harrison. And when he gets to that next level, I'm going to be curious about how he handles when he's not completely in control of fights, because he kind of takes like TV timeouts in fights where he's like, okay, now I'm going to do my shtick.
I think that's a great point, but the only thing I would say is when he gets hit, he does respond, right? Like when he takes a clean shot, he does kind of make a point in getting his get back. And I think that that's his nature, is to try to get his get back.
Very much so. Tony Harrison had a fight, maybe the weirdest post-fight interview of the year. I definitely, maybe, are we going to give out weird post-fight interview award of the year? That seems like an award we should hand out. The best, the Latif Coyote post-fight interview award.
I mean, I think we'll be the first ones to do it.
Well, I'm trying to come up with one. The Houdini is who disappeared. We're gonna ban one thing in boxing. We're gonna call it forbidden. And I guess I'll bury the lead. I'll do my thing for next week. I'm banning people doing the shush sign when they're a betting favorite. So you're not allowed to do the shush, like you're silencing the doubters when you're fighting a 4-10 fighter.
Bro, maybe we'll do best Callums and best Liams.
Okay, yeah, the best. I think next week for the awards we'll rank the best Callums and Liams. So
Callum of the year and Liam of the year, dude.
Yes. So okay, you get where I'm going with this. Yeah, but I feel strongly that the shush needs to be banned, like especially at the club level when you're fighting a guy that's like 1-3 and you do the shush on the scale, or you knock him out in the first round and hit the shush, like everybody was like doubting you. But yeah, Tony Harrison's interview might be up there for like the weirdest one where he goes.
What was weird about it? I missed it.
So he starts by saying he needs a new roof for his gym, but it goes on for a long time. It's like a long kind of rambling one. And it was preceded by that he has faith. He's Muslim and he has faith, which is good, but you go from his faith to a roof for his gym to an Errol Spence Jr. call out and basically saying, I'm not interested in fighting young fighters. There's just a lot to unpack. And there was basically no Paulie asking questions. Like, it was just kind of like a freestyle. It's definitely a special interview.
Interesting. Well, I have a great Houdini potentially for 2025, and that's Bryan Polaco. I mean, where the fuck has he been since he got robbed against Tony?
We gotta we gotta write down our, like, we'll give away the traditional awards, but we gotta do the Lukey's.
And what's a better Houdini than Bryan Polaco?
Well, I mean, he might be, and then we could possibly get him on the show to accept their award. You know, hey bro, can you come on the show to accept your award on behalf of
But the thing is, you're a Houdini because we want to see you. It's not where nobody's trashing you. I'm saying, where the fuck did you go? We were having a good time.
Should it be the Houdini or the Mystery Man? I feel like Mystery Man might be
Irish
funny.
exit. Maybe the Irish exit.
The Irish exit, yeah.
They just sort of backed out of the room. They didn't tell anybody, you know, that they were done.
the old, where did this guy go? And he's sitting in his house. Yeah. Okay, show's getting sidetracked. Harrison, I hate to say it, but nothing about his performance said that he's going to handle himself at the next level. He gets buzzed. He catches the guy, and I hope he knows.
There's still some skills there, right? There's some skill, but it's the same thing as Regis Prograis. It's the same thing as Regis Prograis. You can still see some offensive and defensive ability, but that punch resistance just isn't there anymore. And that's ultimately going to limit him multiple levels below where he was at his best.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, to me, he's in a dangerous spot where it's like, he's still a good fighter. He's got a great accolade of being a former world champion, where guys are going to want to say they beat a former world champion. But a lot of what made him an exceptional fighter, to me, I don't see it fully being there anymore.
Yeah, I think ultimately there are still remnants of it in the same way that there is with Regis. He isn't somebody who's completely lost, you know, his skill set. His blade hasn't dulled entirely, but it's not the same guy.
Who would we say, would it be the Emmanuel Navarrete a star overnight award? Is that, like, we got to, like, who would the random guy that, like, because that would be like a Boss Barreyu or Rafael Espinoza, like the guy that just pops up out of nowhere. Is that the Emmanuel Navarrete award?
I don't remember Navarrete just popping up out of nowhere, though.
He fought Isaac Dogbo, and he was just a random dude, and he just beat him.
Yeah, I kind of felt like Isaac Dogbat was a random dude, though, too, a little bit at the time. So it was kind of.
We got to have a meeting about all these awards. We got to come up with. I think we might even make the. Yeah, we got to do this. Going through the questions. Will Okoli fight Fabio Wardley? I wouldn't be mad at that. Barayu will beat Xander Zayas.
You might have a point
very
there, Bob.
likely. Or I wouldn't say very likely. I mean, that's a 50-50 fight. ProBox TV, great show. Hamzat fighting again. He has no chin. I can't wait for him to get exposed. Well, that's not very nice. Hamzat's a pretty good fighter. Mighty Brooke, emojis, good afternoon, and the new let's go. Brooke won her fight. She's got a belt. Way to go. Can we ban pickle riders and fanagers, said Lobster 11. Those Callum Smith arm punches to the body on the inside look pathetic. That also reminds me, Callum Simpson lost to Troy Williamson this weekend.
We lost a good Callum.
We lost a good Callum. Should that be the award? The morning of a Callum and a Liam that lose?
Listen, it's a crazy day when you lose both at the same. You know, if you have and imagine if you had a Liam and a Callum on the same card and they both lost on the same card,
and they both lost.
And what's crazy is the Liam Callum thing. Like it, but I'm saying if you had a good nickname, you'd really stand out. And there's a Liam and Callum Smith are brothers in the same family. So Liam's and Callum's, they travel in packs, you know?
What if there was a fighter named Liam Cal? If we ever did like a boxing video game live stream, that would be our character, would be Liam Callum.
Absolutely.
Right? That would be our guy, right? A boxer puncher. Undersized middleweight. So he's like 5'6", you know?
Yeah, graying hair, but they're fucking 33.
You can't get has Lukey hated on Inoue yet? Man, okay, so we got to get to that segment. What up, my guys? Mega Soto. Is Ben Shalom on Skid Row? No one's left. Nah, Boxers got guys. Salute Lukey and Dakota. My favorite boxing story this weekend is how the Argentinian cruiserweight won. Speaking of which, another one before we break down Inoue, your guy RG Cortez gets knocked out this weekend. Can you believe it? He gets knocked out by Yair Frank in 14 seconds.
Whoa.
So is Yair Frank every time he fights, we might need to watch this guy?
I mean, you get a 14-second knockout against anybody, you have my attention, right? Like it does kind of take a special type of power to be able to do that. Very reminiscent of David Tua and John Ruiz.
Yeah, I mean, at the lower weights too. So let's get into the final segment of the show. Obviously, there's only one real big card this week. It's Christmas in America if you celebrate that and you're Christian. Otherwise, hopefully you're off a few days and you can enjoy things. At some point, we're going to do a post-fight, or not a post. Well, we'll do a post-fight show, but we'll also do an awards show. Very, very fun time the end of the year. Naoya Inoue is taking on Alan David Picasso. What are your thoughts, Dakota?
Listen, I think that this will be a relatively one-sided fight. I think Picasso's a good contender and a good fighter, but I think that there's levels. I think that Inoue is coming off, in my opinion, at least one of his best wins at 122 pounds against MJ Akhmadaliev, who felt like kind of the last stone unturned before a super fight with Nakatani. This card in general feels like an unnecessary step to me. I think that Inoue and Nakatani is kind of right for the picking and right where it needs to be. But nonetheless, we're going to do this card and take that risk with high-level opponents. But I do think that Inoue is going to dominate this one.
Yeah, it does. I was thinking about the boxing gods sitting at Olympus or something, just rubbing their fingers together, waiting just to ruin a super fight. But I mean, it does feel to me, in watching tape study on Picasso, I think he's a great fighter, but I think he's very young and he gets hit a lot. And he hasn't quite separated against a top contender level opposition. And then stepping in with Inoue, I think it's just going to be a very difficult fight because.
And we haven't seen him do like a Jarrett Hurd or a Joe Joyce where he's just too overwhelming for even like a skilled guy at a certain level. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he gets hit a lot and he's aggressive, but like you said, he can't weaponize pace or pressure. Like it's never the story of the fight, the level of aggression he's bringing on. It's just something he brings. And, you know, other guys are adjusting to that while it's happening.
That's true. But and listen, I think it's the style and he's at a level where he is going to beat a lot of guys and he's a big guy for the weight. But I just think that Inoue is special. And I think despite many people, I think even you who think maybe that Inoue is on a version of a decline or isn't what he once was, I think he'll still just be too much for Picasso.
I just think this is a levels fight. I think that they get in there and Inoue's, yes, I think he's on a little bit of a decline, but I thought the MJ fight was very good. And I think that I just think the first clean punch he lands is going to change the course of the fight because I just think Picasso's never been hit like that. And it's just going to be a game changer.
Yeah.
Now, the fight that scares me is Junto Nakatani versus Sebastian. Let me read his name.
Isn't it Hernandez?
I think it's Sebastian Hernandez Reyes. Yes, it is. I just didn't want to say the name wrong because that's just so disrespectful. Nakatani is just one of these special fighters where I just can't pick anyone over him because I just think that his attributes are so promising. And I've heard a lot of people say, like, who's he beating? And it's like, well, he's beating all the world champions. He's beating them dominantly. He's a really exciting fighter. Hernandez is kind of the style that you'd hope Picasso is, where he wins on pressure. And his pressure actually does impact fights. So this is I still think Nakatani wins this, but this is a weird fight. If something weird was going to happen, a head clash or something, this is the type of fight where it could happen.
I don't know enough about Sebastian, but I will say for those that ask who has Nakatani beat, another name you could point to that I'm sure you have heard of is Takuma Inoue, the brother of Naoya, who's also coming off a career best win over of course, I'm going to forget his name now, but another fantastic prospect in Japan, undefeated. And I thought that's one of his best wins. It was a dominant win against a high-level guy who continues to win at the top of the division. He beat Alex Santiago, who has the win over Nonito Donaire, stopped him. He's just going through,
this is a real fight. Hernandez Reyes is 20-0 with 18 KOs at 122 pounds. That is something. And he holds a win recently over Azat Hovhannisyan.
Well, that's a big win. And Crazy A's been through a lot of fights, but we know how much fire and desire he got. And so if you beat Crazy A, you got to have something.
Yeah. So, I mean, to me, if something weird were to happen, it would happen in this fight because you got one guy that's got dynamite in his fists. Also on the card, the Lukey calling for something weird happen. What is this guy's name? I always forget it. Will Baldo Garcia Perez will put his IBF super flyweight title on the line against Kenshiro Taraji. Garcia's basically, by a lot of like fans of the lower weights I've seen, viewed as one of the weaker champions in all of boxing. That said, I would not be shocked if Taraji lost this fight. I have a feeling Taraji's pretty done after that last fight.
Why do you think it is that he's not doing a rematch?
I don't know, but he's going. I think he moved up weight, right? Because isn't Ricardo Sandoval and him didn't they fight at 112 pounds and now he's fighting at 115?
Yeah,
so
I guess that's
moved up
true.
a weight class.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting. I think that Kenshiro's style sort of relies on being able to take punishment, and I think the more he moves up in weight, the riskier that becomes.
Just think there's a world where like people that enjoyed Kenshiro, it's like, I don't know, pick a genre of movie or music, right? I think music's the easiest one to do this, right? I could pick a band, I don't know, we'll just say like the Pixies or something. And then you got someone that loves going to vinyl and they'll be like, well, I found this garage rock band from 1976 that's just as good. And to me, it's like, well, I just like my Pixies songs. I like the Doolittle album and all this, but they're like, but this is actually better. And I feel like that's a lot of the argument for Kenshiro Taraji, where very good fighter. I never quite saw the potential of people that really enjoyed him, but I also felt like it was like they were combing the internet looking for exciting fighters who, were kind of unique. And he put together some really unique performances and exciting performances. And it gave them like, okay, I found this guy. This is my guy. He's kind of unsung. Sure. And I felt like he built a fan base off of that, off being an underground guy, exciting guy.
I kind of felt that way about Donnie Nietes, right? Like, I feel like we've all kind of had our own version of that guy where we're like, no, I found the deep cut. Yeah, I found the deep cut,
And I kind of get, like, whenever we push back on Kenshiro, I kind of get that sense that it's like the people that enjoyed his fights, they lived through the deep cuts. And, like, it's hard to understand the deep cuts when you didn't live it. And especially with the style he has, because for me, I just watch it and go, how is this sustainable?
And the answer is it's not, right?
The answer is it's not. And then there's one other card this week. It's in Japan. Ibuki is taking on Felix Alvarado. It's for the IBF flyweight title. Ibuki is an interesting fighter in the sense that I wouldn't say he's elite because he's a champion, but he really loads up on a right hand. He's more that old school Japanese fighter. I think we think of fluidity with the modern Japanese fighters. He's closer to the guy that fought Omar Figueroa and those guys. Who was the guy that? Yeah, like the more the samurai spirit Japanese fighters, where it's like toughness, coming forward, not as much defense. And Felix Alvarado to me is a solid, very solid operator. I believe I've seen him on some
Love me a little Felix
telecast.
Alvarado.
Yeah, he's just like a true professional. Let me look up what I've seen him. Yeah, Angel Ayala is who he fought. He fought Sonny Edwards tough. So I mean, this is one of these fights where you've got a guy, hometown guy, home country guy in Ibuki, but he's got some flaws. And then you got Alvarado, who wins some and loses some, but he's a true professional. Wouldn't be shocked if this became a sneaky, interesting fight that's trending over the holidays. Like, I wouldn't be shocked. This is the type of fight where, like, I'm not saying it would happen, but Alvarado wins 6 rounds, gets hit with a right hand, and is battling back from a cut or a knockdown, but still able to keep the guy away. It kind of feels like a potential high drama fight.
Yeah, and I think Ibuki has been, he's been certainly an interesting guy to watch. I think also has a win over Kenshiro, right? If I'm not mistaken. Interestingly enough, though, I kind of lean towards Alvarado on this one. It just seems like, he's the brother of Rene Alvarado, who seems to win at weird times and has had more winning success even than his brother. And though he wins some, he loses some, he generally wins them. And I just think that I think he's got a good chance in this one.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we are also biased, but that was kind of like, if we did an upset pick of the week, this would be where I lean. I kind of like Alvarado in the sense that, like, Ibuki hits hard as hell. He knocked out Kenshiro because Kenshiro's right in front of him. But Alvarado is a really friggin' tricky guy. And the guys that beat him tend to be the guys who are able to outthink him. And that is a skill within itself. Like, it seems so far, and this would be famous last words, he's able to kind of outbox the puncher, or he's at the very least able to go rounds with the puncher. The chat wants to know why Jazza Dickens isn't fighting. I don't know if you knew this. Did you know that Jazza Dickens is now a world champion? Did you know that?
Yes, I did.
Because I feel like a lot of people didn't know that. So if you didn't know Jazza Dickens was a world champion,
he beat Jordan Gill, right?
I believe so. But here's the thing that many people don't know is when Lamont Roach entered the ring, the WBA stripped him of his title at 130 pounds, meaning Jazza Dickens was elevated to an outright champion.
Good for him, man. Shit.
And Ibuki knocked out Shinga, who's also a really quality fighter as well. Win. So Ibuki, if you stand in front of Ibuki, you're probably getting beat up. That's there. I'm trying to get the chat. I know someone got Hayota Tsutsumi suffered a cut. So Jazza Dickens' title fight that was going to end up on this card has been delayed. So that's why we don't have that fight on the card. But we'll get some fight. So that is the show. It ran long. It was a marathon show. Next week will probably be a lot less of a marathon. Dakota, what are you up to this week? Happy holidays from myself and the listeners of the show. And what do you got going that people can support?
Well, you can check out my article from today that's in the description of the video. You can always catch me on the Lukey Boxing Show, ITR Boxing, and the Slip and Weave podcast. Happy New Year to everybody. It's been such a pleasure being with all you guys this year. And we'll see you next week for the awards show.
Awards show next week. We'll see you guys next week. Take care.